everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to talk about a fundamental concept in CSS that can make or break your styling, CSS specificity. It's a bit of a mouthful, but don't worry. By the end of this video, you'll be a master of the cascade. So let's dive in. What is CSS specificity? CSS specificity is a set of rules that determines which CSS styles are applied to an element. What is specificity? Specificity, to explain that in more simple terms, let's look at the definition from W3 schools. If there are two or more CSS rules that point to the same element, the selector with the highest specificity value will win, and its style declaration will be applied to that HTML element. Think of specificity as a score or rank that determines which style declaration is ultimately applied. We're going to see a very good example in our code. Let's jump right in. Let's start with a simple example. We have a button, as you can see in my HTML document. We have a button with an ID with the name button element. And we also have a class with the name button element, written in the naming convention like it should. And we also have some inline style. You can see I've done some inline style to the button. But how does CSS decide which style to apply? Because we have a bunch of styling here in the style sheet. I've called, this is internal styling, by the way. So I've called the ID, I've called the class, and I've called the element itself, that's the tag itself. And I've also, given it some inline style. So the question now is, how does CSS decide which style to apply? Well, it follows a set of rules. We have the tag selector, like you can see with this button here. All right, this is tag selector because this is the button tag itself. It is going to have the lowest preference. All right, you see that I've called it here and I've given it a styling. If I should comment all of this out, you can see that the button will automatically be aqua because I've commented every other thing out. So let's do it together. Let me remove the styling. Let me also do so for the inline style. Okay, I guess I'll just delete that. I'll put that back later. Let me also comment this out. So you notice that it takes the style that I've given to the button tag itself. If we add a style later in the CSS file, all right, it is going to override the previous one. You're going to notice that even when I called the tag element, that's the button element itself again, and giving it a style, you notice that it overrides this one here. That's how we see the meaning of cascade being explicitly exhibited. All right, so it follows a certain rule. So whatever comes after or comes in the following level, this comes before this, the one that comes after will take more preference to the other one that was called before. And that's just for the tags when you're using the tags style. Now, as you can see that the later style actually wins. So keep in mind that the first rule is that the element, when you're calling the element itself, or when you're trying to style by using the tag itself, it is the lowest in preference. All right. So let's now look at the class selector. You can see that I've given it the class name of button element. Now, when I called it in the style sheet here, let me comment this out. You notice how the specificity value changes. So I'll just comment the ID. You notice how it now overrides whatever styling we're giving to the button itself when we called the button element itself. So what happens is that the class selectors, all right, have a higher specificity than tag selectors. Okay, so even if we define the class selector before the tag selector, the class style up here will still be applied, because even when we highlight over it, you're going to notice the specificity value is 10. All right, 010 is 10. But for this one is like 001. So this is higher. So it will be taking higher preference. So your CSS will rather style with this rather than this. But what about IDs? How do they fit into the picture? ID selectors, like what we have an ID name here already, they have an even higher specificity than class selector. I think I should create a tag here that will show you, a very good. So, like I said, we started with the tag selector. So the tag selector has lower preference compared to the class selector, but the ID selector has higher preference compared to the class selector. So if I should go back and comment this out, you notice that it's going to override the class selector. So let's comment that out. And you also notice that the specificity value is higher than that of the class selector. So when I hover over it, you're going to notice we have 100. So you notice that the ID selector have an even higher specificity than class selector. Look at the one of class selector 010. When you look at the one for ID selector, it is 100. So it is going to override both the class and the tag selector, even if they are defined later in the file. You notice I said that, as cascade, it what comes after is the styling that is preferred. But in CSS rules, when you're using the ID selector, it's going to override both the class selector and the tag selector, irrespective of whether it comes before or after, right? So what is the highest priority style of all? We now have to explore inline style. And I've used it here before, but let's type that again. So let's try inline style. So this takes like the highest priority of us. Let's give the background color. What color should I pick? Let me see. Chocolate. So you notice how the inline style has higher inline style. It has a higher preference compared to the rest of the type of selectors we want to use. So we have the inline style overriding the rest of the selectors. So it has the highest priority of all. They will override all other styles, right, including the ID, classes, and tag selector. But come to think of it, what if we want to make sure our style is applied no matter what? We want a specific style for this element or for this button. That's where the important keyword comes in. So notice what I'm going to do. I'm going to add the important keyword here, and you see it's going to override every other, or it's going to just simply tell CSS that, hey, I'm very important, don't ignore me. And you see, it now takes the color as it is assigned. So by adding important keyword to our style, we are telling CSS to ignore all other styles and apply this one. However, you need to use this keyword sparingly, as it can cause more harm than good. You get, for best practices, you need to use the important keyword sparingly. That's it for today's video on CSS specificity. I hope you now have a better understanding of how to master the cascade. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like and subscribe for more tutorials and tips. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.